AP Psych students, it's Megan here with That was terrible. I have no idea what was making that noise. The noise is gone, right? That terrible, scary noise that just happened. Okay, good. Sorry about that. I am here tonight to review with you guys some multiple choice. This is our first run through with the web app and doing this. So I'm going to click to make the quiz live and share the screen with you. And hopefully this works. So let's see what's happening. All right. Can you guys answer that question? All right, it looks like it's working. Yes, everyone's able to answer. Cool. Okay. So, yep, high self-esteem is the correct answer. Most of you got that right, so that is awesome. All right. And I will kind of be flipping back and forth here into the chat to kind of see if we have any questions about the specific questions. But otherwise, I'm going to click on and we're just going to kind of keep cruising. But if as a question comes up on the screen and you're like really confused about why the answer is what it is, you can just type it in the chat and I will do my best to answer with you guys there. So when a 17-year-old student is failing at school, which society is most likely to hold the parents accountable? And so I'm pretty sure this is similar. You can get like streak points and things like that if you get multiple answers in a row correct. And we can talk about this one. I think, Ria, that was somebody who had played previously. It was like on a sample thing, so we'll ignore the student in first place. So yeah, this answer would be in Japanese culture, because specifically speaking, we're looking at kind of what the question is getting at here as collectivist versus individualistic cultures. And a collectivist culture is where like the family and everyone is kind of seen as a group. You're not seen so much as an individual. So if you as a student are failing in a collectivist culture, that's a reflection of your family as well. And so that's why it would be, typically we would see collectivist cultures in East Asia, and then more like European and Western culture tends to be more individualistic. All right. Next question. A severely overweight rat would most likely result from lesioning of the Good, we're getting some answers in. Oh, what happened there? There we go. Good. Yep, the hypothalamus. Looks like you guys pretty much got that one down. And then in particular, make sure you know the ventromedial and the lateral hypothalamus, because those are the two parts that definitely play a role in hunger. Next question. A classically conditioned response can best be eliminated by presentation of... Ooh, so this was a tricky one, it looks like. So, the answer for this one is the, and I'm having a hard time, can you guys read that okay? Oh, what's happening here on the screen? Can best be eliminated by presentation of the conditioned stimulus without, what is the rest of it there? The conditioned stimulus, it doesn't show me the full answer. That, oh, without the unconditioned stimulus. So what that's getting at basically is saying that like if I stop giving the reward, like for example with the dog salivating, if I stop giving that the food, the dog's going to stop salivating to the bell, basically. So if we stop placing that reward or that final thing, which is the unconditioned stimulus, then it will go away. Or the unconditioned stimulus with it. I apologize. I said that backwards. All right, next question. Dr. Scarlett conducted experiments in which she electrically stimulated the brain of a cat. If the cat became terrified at the sight of a mouse, which part of the brain was most likely stimulated? Good. The limbic system deals with like emotional responses. Therefore, we could expect to see that. Ria, there is 50 questions total. All right, next one. Scott tried to unscramble the letters Nebotya for 20 minutes to spell a word, but was not successful. While walking to class, the answer suddenly came to him that the word was bayonet. This exemplifies... Good. Insight is the answer. It's your aha moment. Like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. A heuristic would be if we like were trying different strategies to like solve the puzzle and we eventually solved it. And then an algorithm would be if we tried every single letter combination to get it right. So that would be heuristic or algorithm. Good. Let's look. Someone has a question in the chat. I'll look at it while you guys are answering your next question. The next question is, when Kelsey saw shadows of people on the walls of her bedroom, her blood pressure and heart rate both increased. These physical reactions were most directly regulated by her... All right, so the answer to that one is sympathetic nervous system. Yep, that's what's going to kick in. That is what amps you up, right? You get nervous and all of those things start happening. Your heart rate, your blood pressure, all those things skyrocket. And then our parasympathetic nervous system is what calms us down because it's like a parachute, right? A parachute slows you down when you're falling. Your parasympathetic nervous system slows you down. And so... the question that was in the chat here, which I'll answer right now, is which person held the insight theory? I guess I don't really associate it with one specific person, but I think it was Gestalt if we're going to give someone a specific, like it's called the Gestalt theory of learning. But I typically wouldn't think that a name or anything like that would be associated with it too much. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. All right, the next question here, and I'll keep coming back to the questions in the question tab as well. Which of the following concepts is most integral to Sigmund Freud's psychoanalytic theory? All right, good. The answer for that one is the unconscious mind. We all apparently know our Freud really well. I think today is Freud's birthday too. So happy birthday. It was either today or yesterday was Freud's birthday. So you guys are good on that. All of the following are positive symptoms of schizophrenia except... Good. Flat affect. So when we say positive here, we don't mean like good. We mean that there's like an added in symptom, like a hallucination or a delusion or things like that. And then a negative symptom is when like we're missing like an appropriate response. And so something like flat affect would be that. Good. And I see some questions coming in, and I will get to them. Some of them relate to some other questions, so I'm going to hold off on them. Question 10. Ben thinks students will answer questions printed on yellow paper more quickly than those printed on blue, etc., etc. All right, yes, the color of the paper is the independent variable. It's the thing that we're seeing whether or not it has an effect or impact on the study. Good, you guys are doing a really good job. Receptors that respond to gravity and keep you informed of your body's position in space are located primarily in the so that one was a little bit tricky. Yeah, so it's mostly, I guess, definitional for this one. But yeah, the semicircular canals are, remember, they're filled with fluid and they orient ourselves in space and time. So that, yeah, that is the answer. Let's go on to the next one. The medical model of psychologically disordered behavior is most likely to be criticized for neglecting the importance of good, because the medical model is focused on like biological factors, so things like neurotransmitters and genetics, and all of those sorts of things are biological, whereas social circumstances are not. Here we go. Next question, 13. Esther forgot her pillow. Good. Functional fixedness, when we like can't get beyond like what the thing is used for. Like this cup is a cup and I can only think of it as a cup. That's functional fixedness. But if I can think outside the box and think of different ways or things to do with this cup, then I'm getting past the functional fixedness. Can you guys hear me now? It said someone in the chat said they can't hear me. Okay, good. Thank you. Question 14, the DSM-5 provides info of all of the following except Good. Causes of all mental disorders. Basically, the DSM-5 is good for categorizing and labeling disorders, things like that, but it does not get into like treatment or necessarily all of the causes of mental disorders. Good, good, good. So I think what I'm going to do, because I'm seeing more questions pop up, I'm going to get through the whole trivia first, and then once we're done with the trivia, I'll answer any of the questions in the Ask a Question tab if we have time, because I want to make sure the people that are here to do the trivia get to do that first. And we will most likely have time. So, people are basically good. Who would have said that? Good. He is a humanist, and in humanism, that's like our touchy-feely approach to psychology, where we're all about like the good in people and things like that, finding the best, growth, potential, things like that. A pigeon trained to peck at one colored light also pecks at another. This best illustrates. Oh, what happened? Okay. I see myself. Do you see me? Okay, good. I'm going to share my screen again. Maybe. Here we go. All right. Yay, we're back. I don't know what happened. We'll figure it out. Here we go. On to the next question. I think it still is live and working, so hopefully we didn't lose our points. It doesn't look like we did. Good. Sorry about that. Good learning theory talks about how like observational learning, basically, right? We watch others, we learn through our environment, things like that socially. And so when we watch TV, we display those violent behaviors back. Good. All right. 18. Which of the following would play a role in quickly alerting you to a in your car? Good. Olfactory deals with smell and nose. So you'd most likely smell the gas. Good. I'm not even going to read this one. Do your best. There's a lot of numbers here, so it's a little confusing. Good. So to help remember the different forms of interference, proactive, yeah, this was a hard one. Proactive interference deals with old information. We do the PORN acronym. I know we've talked about that before, but proactive interference is old information interfering with new. So that's the P and the O in PORN. Retroactive interference is when new information interferes with old. And so that is a way to kind of help you remember that silly little acronym, I guess. A therapist used a thematic, a perception test to analyze her patient's problems. She was most likely a... Good. These projective tests are ways that psychologists can possibly like look into your unconscious or your subconscious to kind of make observations about you, what might be causing you distress. And so basically the thought is that you're projecting those emotions onto these ambiguous tests. Good. Psychology is the science of behavior and mental processes. In their definition, behaviorists would eliminate good. Behaviorists are all about observable behavior, and so mental processes, if they can't see it, they don't necessarily care about it as much. So that is why they would get rid of the mental processes part. Which of the following scans can image brain functions? 1 CAT, 2 MRI, 3 PET scan. Ooh, looks like we were all over the place on that one. Brain function. Yep. The other ones are structural. Wait, hold on. Yep, the other two are structural, whereas the PET scan with the glucose, you can see where it's flowing in different parts of the brain and actually see like activity in the brain. Good. Carlin read a list of 30 vocab words only once. If he's a typical learner and shows the primacy effect, we would expect that the words she remembered 2 days later are... I switched gender halfway through that question. It's fine. All right, at the beginning, yep, primacy effect says that we remember things at the beginning of a list. If it was recency effect, then Carlin would remember things at the end of the list. After sending a decal to display in a window and greeting cards, a charity then sent the same people envelopes requesting monetary contributions. What technique are they using to make that money? Yep, good. You guys are rocking it. Foot in the door effect, right? We start by asking for something small, and then we build up to a larger request. President of a company brought in an outside consultant to disagree with him about an important decision. Rebecca, door in the face is asking for something big first, like asking your parents to borrow $100. And then when they say no, then you say, actually, can I just borrow $10? And then they're more likely to accept that request. So door in the face is starting big and then going small. Foot in the door is starting small and then building up to the larger request. Good. Groupthink, we're trying to avoid that, like everyone's being harmonious, because we then often miss out on seeing potential problems or things like that if we're all just in agreement. Good. Tests that have been pre-tested with a sample of the population for whom it is intended have a uniform set of instructions and administration procedures are... Good. Standardized. That is what you will be doing in a couple of days, taking a standardized exam. Which of the following best exemplifies sensory adaptation? Oops. Good. Your body adapts and then your senses don't notice. I always tell my students, like, think about the fact that you are wearing underwear, right? You don't feel it all day, but then when you start thinking about it, you feel it again. You adapt to whatever that stimuli is, because there's so many senses, so much information all the time. Your body has to do that to handle it all. Get cookie. Best exemplifies. All right, good. Telegraphic speech, right? You just leave out all of the extra words and you say what you want. It's often like a noun and a verb, things like that compare together. Little kids, right? This is like as kids are learning speech. More than half of the human brain is composed of... Good. Yep. Makes up the majority of the brain. Which neurotransmitters are most closely associated with both Parkinson's disease and schizophrenia? Which neurotransmitter is, sorry, typo there. Good. Dopamine is the answer. As the time for the AP Psychology exam approached, students in the class who had not been doing homework or attending classes became more concerned about studying and attending regularly. All right, so the answer for this one is extrinsic. And so the extrinsic is the fact that, like, oh, he's not actually learning to learn because he enjoys learning or because he enjoys AP psychology. He's now being motivated to learn from an external factor, the fact that the AP test is coming up. Good, de-individuation. The smallest unit of meaning in a language is called a... Good. Morpheme and meaning both start with M, so they go together. And then phoneme is like sounds of language. So like S or T or A, those are phonemes, those are sounds. Whereas morphemes are individual components of meaning. So that could be things like prefixes, suffixes, adding an S to the end of a word, making it plural. Those are all examples of morphemes. And so again, those of you posting questions in the chat, I will, or in the like ask a question tab, I do plan on getting to them. We're just going to finish the quiz first. Good. Logical reasoning is the correct answer. The other ones are more at the earlier stages of development. Here we go. Jake, a 25-year-old criminal. Good. Antisocial personality disorder, someone who doesn't seem to care about others, only looking out for their own well-being, doesn't feel bad about harming or hurting other people. Priya takes the behavior of people as they wait in line for tickets to Taylor Swift's new show. Which of the following research methods is Priya using? Good. Naturalistic observation, taking people in their natural environment, studying them and seeing what it tells us about them. Good. So that one seems to be a little tricky for people. The answer is conversion disorder, which is when we experience some sort of psychological trauma, in this case witnessing a murder, and then that manifests itself into physical, like really specific acute symptoms like going deaf and going blind. PTSD would be more of like having nightmares or flashbacks or anxiety surrounding the event, but PTSD wouldn't have you develop symptoms like blindness or deafness. So that's why it is conversion disorder. Next question. Good. It's not ethical, so we would not want to do that anymore. Good. And so you'll see some of the questions are like more definitional, right? Like this is pretty straightforward definitional. And some of them are going to be more like scenario based. And you'll have a combination of those on the AP test. There'll also be ones with like images, charts, and graphs and stuff, but I didn't include any like that tonight. Good. A prejudice is like your attitude or opinion towards another group. Discrimination would be like an active action that's like hurting or against a specific group. Good. Crystallized intelligences are accumulated knowledge over time. So that builds up as we go. Oops. There we go. Oh no, what happened here? Hopefully that didn't affect you. Oh, did we? Okay, we did. Okay. Yep, human potential, human growth, that sort of thing. Good. Next one, we're getting down to the wire here. You guys are doing a great job. Good. Ooh, some Erikson for you. All right. Ooh, so that one is tricky. And so I would say young adult is referencing someone in their like early to mid 20s onward. I would probably, if it was for the identity versus role confusion, say something about like a teenager. Yeah, so that's why that one is tricky, but intimacy versus isolation would be people who are in their like 20s and early 30s. They're trying to develop those relationships and things like that. So that's a little bit tricky with the young adult, but I would say if it's referencing the identity stage, that would say like teenagers instead. Ooh, the Bucks game just ended. Good. Your superego, that's the conscience that sits on your shoulder and tells you the good and the bad, the good things to do, and it tells you to not skip class and to go and study for your test. Good. Sleep spindles, our dear, dear friends. Good. NREM2 has to do with the sleep spindles, which are just little rapid bursts of activity that happen. Good. Set point theory. It's that we all have kind of a balancing out point that we reach, and once we hit it, it's difficult to kind of keep going past it. Couple more questions. And then I'll get to all of them. There's like 19 of them in the Ask a Question tab thingy. Good. Compulsion is an action. Good. Amplitude determines sound, whereas frequency determines the pitch of the sound. Two more. Self-esteem and self-actualizing. There's a couple questions about this tonight on here. I bet you guys are going to rock this one. Good. I'm sorry, there was quite a few humanistic ones on here tonight. And the last question, Jorge's therapist tells him to relax and focus on meditation whenever he begins to experience fear about being in a public space. The therapist is using a technique central to Ooh, tricky one. So the first step in systematic desensitization is we learn how to relax, and then we start to work our way through like our fear or our anxiety about a certain situation. And so we slowly desensitize ourselves. It is sensitization. And so typically you'll see that used with phobias. So if that pops up on the AP test, it's most often associated with treating a specific type of phobia and getting the person to work through those things. All right, so I'm going to I'm not sure here. Okay. I'm going to keep the quiz live because I don't want it to like end my session with you guys right now. So we'll just leave the screen like this. And then I will talk through some of these questions that people have in the Ask a Question tab down here. And so I'll read the question and kind of talk through it, and hopefully that will be beneficial to you. So the first question is, what is the difference between shaping and chaining? And so I would say that they're very similar and they go together in conditioning someone. But I would say chaining is like the whole process of building towards a specific behavior, while as like shaping is like a part of the process. So to me, shaping is kind of like, if you've ever played the game like you're getting warmer, hot, 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 you're on fire, that game, that's kind of what shaping is. You're like rewarding behaviors as they get kind of close to like reinforce them. And like chaining is building then those behaviors one on another to get towards that desired behavior, if that makes sense. So hopefully that answered your question. The next question deals with action potential. Action potential is just when a neuron is firing. That's what it's referencing. And so what happens is that neuron receives a message from another neuron, and it then, once it reaches its whatever the threshold is that it needs to fire, the ions in the why not myelin sheath, the axon, I'm just blanking on that. The ions in the axon then, due to that energy, are pushed in and out, and it kind of just creates this like wave effect of then the message traveling down the axon, which then that releases the neurotransmitters, and then the next neuron takes in the message and does the same sort of thing. So action potential is just the firing of the neuron, which is those ions moving in and out of the axon. Okay. The next question says, can you explain the difference between, oops, my questions just switched. How is de-individuation different from social conformity? So de-individuation is losing your like identity kind of in a crowd, and in particular it could be like what we talked about with like the gang members, like hiding their identity and then feeling more free to like commit crimes. Social conformity is more like you're doing it to fit in, like you want to be part of the group. So they're not necessarily mutually exclusive, but de-individuation isn't like I'm doing it to fit in. It's more of like I'm just losing my identity and I'm like going along with the crowd, and I'm kind of, I don't want to say de-individuate because that's the term, but you're kind of losing yourself. Whereas social conformity is more of like a conscious decision to like, I just want to fit in and do these sorts of things. All right. Can you explain the difference between bottom-up processing and top-down processing? So bottom-up processing starts with sensation. All of that information is coming into your brain. So think about, you're looking at a tree outside, and you see the shape of the leaves, and you see the color of the leaves, and you see the pokey branches and all those things. All of those pieces get put together through bottom-up processing. So bottom-up processing is like the taking in of all of those different pieces of information and then putting them together and saying that's a tree or whatever it is. Top-down processing is when we are doing the like brain is like predisposed to think in a certain way. You might have been primed to think about something. And so I always use the duck bunny picture. I'm sure you guys have seen that, but it looks kind of like a duck and it looks kind of like a bunny. And if we had previously been talking about like a rabbit, and then I showed you that picture, then you would see that you would most likely see it as a rabbit because I've primed you to think about that. That's the top-down processing. Your thinking, your predispositions, your thoughts are impacting how you're interpreting what you're seeing or feeling or smelling. So sensory information is taking all the pieces and putting them together. Top-down is kind of already having like a perceptual idea or a predisposition to the stimuli. Jay, I am unsure. Gross and motor operational thinking. Honestly, I'm not sure. I Googled that because it was throwing me for a loop and I wasn't finding anything. I was maybe thinking, are you talking about gross motor skills? Gross skill, like skills and motor skills? I'm not really sure. But if you're talking about like skills, when we're talking about like fine motor skills, those are like being able to like handwrite and hold a pencil and do those sorts of things, or button up a shirt. Whereas gross motor skills would be like walking, standing, things like that. But I apologize if that's not what you're answering. But yeah, gross refers to like the basic skills of like walking, standing, like the really like basic skills that we all kind of go through and learn. And then fine motor skills is like holding a pencil, buttoning a shirt, things that take a little more detail, painting, things like that. Yes, types of brain imaging scans. I'm going to see if I can come up with all of them off the top of my head here. Excuse me. So a PET scan uses the glucose, and then they track it like through your brain, and so that's showing activity, so it can like pinpoint different parts of your brain to see what's happening. An MRI then is showing you the structure of the brain, so like different parts of the brain. And then a functional MRI is a combination of showing you both the function and the structure of the brain. And EEG measures like brain wave activity. What am I missing? CT scan shows the structure of the brain. I think that's all of them off the top of my head. I don't think I'm missing any. And that's probably the biggest thing, is just knowing structure versus function, because that would probably be the most likely way that they would ask a question about those. Looks like this one was sort of answered already, but I'll answer it as well. What is the difference between crystallized and fluid intelligence? So crystallized intelligence, yep, is like your lifelong learning. Think about like your vocabulary. That's always increasing. You're learning new words, facts and figures, information. Fluid intelligence is like your ability to like problem solve and like speedily and abstractly think about things. That actually declines as we get older. We have a harder time like kind of sort of thinking through new problems. That's why sometimes older people have a hard time learning like new technology and that. All right, difference between id, ego, and superego. So I always think of it like in the cartoons, like the devil on your shoulder, the angel on your shoulder. The id is sort of like the devil on your shoulder. It's all about like pleasure and what you want and what you need, and it's all about those sorts of things. The superego then is the angel that sits on your other shoulder and says, don't do that, you should be good, you should do this good stuff. And then the ego is how you really are. It's the in-between. It's how you navigate the devil on one shoulder and the superego on the other shoulder telling you what to do. And so it's your reality. It's how you kind of probably do some things that give in a little bit to the id and the devil, and then you also do some things that give in to the angel and the superego, and it's how we balance those things. Order of the sleep stages. NREM 1 is like as you fall asleep. It just goes in numerical order. So like 1, 2, 3. NREM 1 is when you're like kind of half awake, half asleep. NREM 2 is as you fall a little bit deeper into sleep. NREM 3 is like sleep. I'd have to like shake you awake. And then you go back up to 2. You don't go back to 1 at all. 1 is just the first time through, but you go 1, 2, 3, 2, and then REM. REM is when we dream. Our brain looks super active. It almost looks like we're awake. However, our body is paralyzed and in sleep. And then from REM, we go back down to 2, 3, 2 REM, onward and onward we go. REM gets longer as the night progresses, and NREM 3 gets shorter as we progress. So the PORN acronym for pro and retroactive interference. So Proactive interference is when old information interferes with new. So let's say my girlfriend is telling me her phone number, and I keep getting it wrong when I type it in because I'm remembering my old girlfriend's phone number instead. So that's proactive interference. That old information, my old girlfriend's phone number, is interfering with me remembering the new information. And then retroactive interference is when new information interferes with our memory of old information. So that's why we use the acronym PORN, because proactive old interferes with new, retroactive R, new interferes with old. So hopefully that's helpful. Drug classifications. So we have stimulants. That's going to be things like nicotine, meth. Those are probably the two most common things that make you like more hyper, more up, right? A stimulant ups your system. Then we have depressants, which are sort of the opposite. So those are things like barbiturates, opiates, alcohol. All of those are going to depress your neural system. So they're going to slow your functioning down, things like that. And then the third category is hallucinogenic drugs. And that would be like LSD, which makes you hallucinate and see things that aren't actually there or hear things that aren't actually there. And then technically, marijuana is classified as a mild hallucinogenic drug as well. So yeah, for those, just kind of knowing what stimulate and depress means, that's helpful. And then just kind of knowing which drugs go in which category. Positive versus negative symptoms. So when we say positive and negative in psychology, we don't mean good or bad. Positive means we're adding something in. So in the case of like schizophrenia, a positive symptom is an added in symptom. So we're adding in hallucinations. That's not something that's quote unquote normal or a standard thing. It's added into the situation as a symptom. A negative symptom then is when we're missing or subtracting a quote unquote normal response. So having that flat affect of like, you just have this blank face and personality and no reaction to things like that, or the absence of proper emotional responses, a toneless voice. So you don't get excited and you don't get angry, you just talk monotone like this and have no reaction. Those are negative symptoms because you're missing the appropriate reactions or responses. Okay, sensory adaptation versus habituation. So sensory adaptation, looks like this is sort of answered already, is sort of like your brain doesn't forget that it's there, but it sort of does. Your brain's focusing on other things. So that we have, right, so that we're able to focus. If our brain was constantly taking in all of the sensory input, it would overload us. Habituation is more like learning. Like I show you, like for babies, you show them like a picture, and after a while that's like, that's old news. I already know what that looks like, so they pay less attention to it. Whereas sensory adaptation is, I would say like habituation is also more of like almost like a conscious choice, whereas sensory adaptation is a little bit below our conscious awareness, if that makes sense. Couple more questions. I'm going to go a little past 9, but then I'm going to log off. So standardization, reliability, validity, those sorts of testing things. A test is standardized. Think about like the ACT or AP tests or any other tests like that you take. They're standardized, meaning the instructions that are read are all the same. The times that you take it are all the same. You have to use a pencil. It's been tested on other people. The procedure is always the same. So it's standardized. No matter if I'm taking it in Wisconsin or you're taking it in California, everything should be similar to make it fair. A test is reliable if when you take it, you get consistent results. So if you took the ACT one day and you got a 31 on it, and then the next day you got a 21 on it, we would say that that's not very reliable, because why would your score vary that much? It shouldn't. Instead, if you take the ACT one day and you get a 31 and the next day you get a 29, we would say, yeah, that's pretty reliable. Your score is pretty consistent. So that's what we're talking about with reliability, that that the testing is similar across the different times that you take it. And then validity refers to, does the test actually test what it's saying? So when you take the AP Psych exam, is it truly testing you on your AP psychology knowledge? When you take your driver's exam behind the wheel, is it testing your driving ability? So is it validly testing what it says it's going to test? Please go over prejudice, discrimination, and stereotype. So prejudice is more of a thought, whereas discrimination is more of an action. And then stereotype is not necessarily, stereotypes aren't always negative. I mean, they are negative typically because you're not actually getting to know someone, but stereotypes are just like over-exaggerated thoughts about a group, but it's not necessarily like horrible, like whereas prejudice is like, I hate this group of people, that sort of thing. A stereotype might be like, girls are bad at math, which isn't nice, but it's an often like over-exaggerated like opinion about a group, I guess. And obviously it's not true for everyone in the group either. And so they sometimes start like with historical roots, but there's not necessarily truth, right? There's girls who are really good at math and there's boys who aren't good at math. So it's just like a stereotype that's not necessarily true. Question bank. This question bank is on the Fiveable website. So all of these trivia questions are on there when you go into the app and you can play trivia. All of these questions should be in there so you can access them later. Could copycat violence be tied to the social learning theory? I would say that that's really complicated. So if you're talking about like when there's like a school shooting and then we see that there's like other threats of school shootings in like the days and weeks afterwards, that's really complicated. I would say maybe partially due to like the attention and stuff, things like that. Like, oh, look at all the attention this person got. I also want that attention. So that could involve some like observational learning of seeing like the consequences or the results. So that definitely plays a role. We also see that with like suicides. If there's like a highly publicized suicide case, that always makes us nervous because more people then also attempt suicide in the days and weeks afterwards. So that definitely does have to do a little bit with like social learning and observation. Yeah. Yep. GABA is a neurotransmitter. It is an inhibitory one, meaning it like kind of pumps the brakes on things happening in the brain. And so if you don't have enough of it, you've got too much going on. Foot in the door phenomenon. So we went over this a little bit, but foot in the door is the small request first, and then you build up to the larger request because you've gotten your foot in the door, someone's listening to you, right? You can then ask them for your second larger favor. Okay, I think one other, I'm trying to see if I've got all these questions. All right. Most of these look like they have some answers tied to them. I'm going to answer one more and then I'm going to log off for the night. This is the last one that I saw that I think's been up here for a while. The difference between a compulsion and an obsession. Compulsion is your actions. I'm compelled to wash my hands. I'm compelled to clean the dishes. My obsession is the thoughts about I'm obsessed with germs. Therefore, I'm compelled to wash my hands. So the obsessions are the thoughts, which then often lead to the compulsions or the behaviors. So that is all I'm going to go over tonight. Hopefully most of you got your questions answered. Like I said, tomorrow night, 8 o'clock, I will be doing FRQ review. We'll go over a couple different types of FRQ and some strategies. I believe next, though, we have to pay the $5 for the Fiveable. So if you want to do FRQ review, see if you can come up with that $5 and you can get some one-on-one FRQ review with me. Otherwise, if you have any questions, make sure you join the Facebook page as well, because we can answer some questions there. Good luck on the AP test. You guys are going to do awesome. So I will see you guys tomorrow night. Bye.